evening, ladies and gentlemen. As ever, there's lots to discuss on the live stream, and there are lots of us to discuss it. As well, I've got two guests joining us this evening, who I will introduce a little bit later. But I'll talk about a few issues just while we're warming up. Obviously, I welcome your comments as ever. Do type away. We'll try and bring in as many comments as we can. I mean, it seems like you just never know what's going to happen within the next week in Scottish politics at the moment, and certainly there's been plenty going on. We're going to be talking about some of that this week. I mean, where can we start? Let's start with a couple of little issues. I was watching First Minister's questions last week, and the Conservatives and Labour were having a go at John Swinney about teacher numbers. You know, did you promise to increase teacher numbers? And there's a big problem in Glasgow at the moment, and the Glasgow City Council is having to reduce teacher numbers quite dramatically. And there's been some parent protests about it. And so this is like totally contrary to the usual aims of the SNP. They wanted to be spending more and more teachers, but they're having to cut numbers quite dramatically. And it was fascinating to hear in the Parliament John Swinney explaining the reason for it. As he said, it's because of the equal pay claim. It's the equal pay claim that's resulting in, was it 250? Anyway, a large number of teachers. They're going to lose their jobs. Well, they're going to reduce the number of teachers in Glasgow because they've run out of money, because they've had to pay the best part of £1 billion in an equal pay claim, which is roughly the education budget for the whole city for a year. That's what they lost in this equal pay claim. Now, John Swinney, instead of saying, this is terrible, that all this public money has basically been siphoned off by some opportunistic lawyer to give to people where there'd been no injustice at all, he, of course, blamed it on the Labour Party. He said the Labour Party were running Glasgow at the time and they weren't paying women properly. So it's the Labour Party's fault that the city's lost all of this money. I mean, obviously, these equal pay claims, they're going on all over Scotland. They're going to hit other council areas as well, including SNP ones. This is the sort of place where you might have hoped, well, you probably wouldn't, but in an ideal way, you might have hoped that maybe the Conservatives would say, well, actually, these equal pay claims, we disagree with them. Councillors shouldn't be having to pay out this hundreds of millions of pounds in equal pay claims. There's no justice in it at all. Having teachers in schools is what really counts, not putting in practice feminist theory through the legal system. But will anyone say that in the Parliament? Of course not. Not a soul, not a glimmer. I'm not sure anyone in the Parliament even understands the issue, let alone would speak about it. So it's one of those many issues, many times when you watch the Scottish Parliament, watch the so-called debates and think, we need to be in there. They need the Scottish Family Party in the Scottish Parliament. Another couple of small issues just while we're warming up. Well, I made a video or two about the situation in Gaza. In fact, I watched some debates in the Parliament when they were debating the Israel-Gaza conflict. And it was one of those things where they call it a debate. They should really call it a recitation afternoon, because one MSP after another stands up. They don't engage with each other. They just recite their speech. And their speech is basically about 90% of it is common with the other speeches. They just repeat each other, saying the same things. And they kept repeating the 30,000 figure for civilian casualties in Gaza. And when I commented on this, I said, this figure seems to be from Hamas. I don't know about you, but I don't regard like genocidal anti-Semitic death cults as being the most reliable source of statistics. I'm not sure their sort of Office of Statistics is particularly reliable. So I said that, but you feel like you're going out on a limb because everyone's quoting this. But now United Nations have said they think these figures were way off, possibly double reality. So again, it's one of those times when you see in the Parliament and you just think that there's a whole set of perspectives completely absent from the debate. It's all very cozy, and let's say some vital opinions, I think, never really get a look at. Just another quick issue to mention as well. There's been a lot of talk about tourism. Again, that the government is damaging the tourist industry, partly through hammering the short-term let providers, particularly Airbnb, by making them go through this arduous licensing process. And a lot of them thought, oh, stuff it, I can't be bothered. I'm not going to spend thousands of pounds for this in order to apply. And then they might say no. Or people just think, it's just not worth it. I've had enough. I'm not going to do it anymore. So there's now a very significant shortage of accommodation, and lots of aspects of the tourism industry are saying this is going to be a major problem. There are not going to be as many people in Scotland spending their money in our restaurants and our visitor attractions, whatever, because there's less accommodation available. So there are calls on the government to scrap the licensing scheme, or even in Edinburgh to suspend it for the period of the Edinburgh Festival. Now, in a sense, you might think, oh, that's sensible. Yeah, suspend it for the festival. Then that will make a lot more accommodation available. Well, okay, but what about the people who spent the thousands of pounds actually getting the license? How are they going to feel? I mean, whatever you do, it's a mess. It just compounds the incompetence with the whole issue. It's just over-regulation. In the Scottish Parliament, if you go in with a case why something should be regulated and controlled more, then you're probably going to get your way. You're probably going to get your way. Because they're the people they listen to. The person who's complaining about something, that's the person who listens to. They get listened to. The person who says, I'm running a business. This is what we do. It's really good. We're providing a service that people want. We're making a bit of money as well. We're paying some tax. And so we're doing a good thing. No. They're not interested in that in the Scottish Parliament. That doesn't really carry much weight at all. It's the people who want to complain about something. Generally, they weigh more heavily on the scales. Let's put it that way. Right, do fire in the comments and questions. Right, one more thing to mention, then we'll bring in our guest. I mean, someone sent this to me. It was, where are we? It's a document produced by the Scottish Catholic bishops about assisted suicide, and it's really good. It's really good. So it's just a single A4 sheet that's been produced to be distributed, I assume, through congregations in parishes to explain the position of the church to the congregations. And I think that it's just such a simple thing to do and such a powerful thing to do as well. It's really well written. And I think that's a fine example, I would think, to a lot of other churches as well. I think a lot of Christians, people of other faiths as well, I would imagine they would really appreciate getting something like this. They could just spend 3 or 4 minutes reading and thinking, oh, yeah, I've got that now. Right, thanks for that. That helped me to understand that issue. And it made it clear as well. It's made the church's position clear. So I was very impressed by that document. I mean, the only thing I pick up on at the end is talks about contacting your MSPs, which is fine. But obviously, you'll hear me say quite often, I think a lot of people put a lot of energy into contacting MSPs in order to change their mind. But in a democracy, that's not the way decisions get made. Decisions don't get made by electing the wrong people and then writing letters to them so they change their mind. The process is that you let the people to represent your views, then you don't need to write to them. Or you write to them to say, thanks very much for speaking up for me. And that tends to be missing from a lot of campaigning. But yes, I'm very impressed with that. So that was good. Right, I think we've done on my little preliminary list. So this evening, we are joined by Phil Holden.
Good evening.
Good evening, Phil.
How are you doing?
Good. Yeah. You're not as blue as you were a minute ago. I feel like blue in the picture a while ago, but it's looking better. And we're also joined by a special guest. Regulars like Phil and I don't call those special guests. We're routine guests, but we're joined by a special guest this evening as well, Rosemary Cameron. Rosemary, welcome.
Hello, thank you.
Debut on the live stream. Tell people a little bit about yourself.
Right, so I've been following Scottish politics for a long time. I actually stood for election in 2007 for the Scottish Christian Party in the region. I've not been a member of any party for a long time, but I have been blogging and then tweeting on the Scottish politics ever since then. So I write the blog called Carlton Hill. And I tweet under the same name. And I just like to keep an eye on what's going on in Holyrood.
Yeah, so if you're watching on Twitter, if you've got Twitter open, go and find Carlton Hill. Give Rosemary a follow, and I guarantee you will find her posts enlightening and writing enlightening. We met Rosemary recently because she was involved in the protests that Glasgow Cabby organised and gave some excellent speeches, 2 excellent speeches at the 2 events. So we're delighted you could join us tonight to talk about the issues. Just to start off with the things I've already talked about tonight, have we got anything to chip in on those before we go on to other matters?
Well, yeah, I mean, I certainly agree with this kind of over-regulation. I mean, the SNP government are just not very pro-business. They're not helpful to business. They seem to put in an awful lot of regulation that is damaging to business. I'm hoping that now that they've not got the Greens in coalition with them, that possibly some of the things that the Greens were bringing in, because they're even worse, might be scrapped, and that might be helpful for business. But we're just really going to have to wait and see on that one. But yes, they seem determined to just destroy anything that makes money in this country, I think.
Yeah. It's interesting hearing John Swinney and Kate Forbes talking about trying to make Scotland business friendly, deregulating, attractive to investment, etc. But I mean, it's quite strange to hear that, because that was like virtually unheard in the Nicola Sturgeon and Humza Yousaf era, wasn't it? That was like a foreign language to them. But it seems to have come back a bit now. I think with Kate Forbes, it's because that's what she really believes. I mean, for John Swinney, is it more that just that's what the opinion pollsters are telling him is a good line to take? I don't know. I don't know.
Yes. I think Kate certainly will be good on that. And she understands the sort of economy of the Highlands, which has been getting hammered with the sort of Airbnb type regulation, and also other things where they're going to start saying that you can't have homes with wood burning stoves, etc. So she's, hopefully she will bring that sort of voice of reason into the Parliament and be heard.
Yeah. It's interesting. Generally, the green policies are least popular in the greenest places, the rural places, are where the Greens cause most mayhem and chaos, because they're all city dwellers. But their policies, the effects of their policies, are felt far and wide. Just on the subject of Kate, I've been making videos commenting quite extensively, but I'd be quite interested to hear your take at the moment. What's going on there, do you think? How will things turn out, or what's your take on how things have developed so far?
Well, I'm not really surprised at what's going on, because I mean, you've got to remember Kate sat in Nicola Sturgeon's government for quite a long time as a minister. The Greens were brought into that. So in that sort of sense, it's more of the same. But well, and in a sense, quite disappointing, because she's clearly just going to follow the party line. That's what she said. What can you say? It would be nice if she actually stood up for women and girls, I think. But I don't think we're going to get that. I didn't see her bringing any particular influence, when she was in Nicola Sturgeon's government. I see her being an influence in this government in terms of the business in the Highlands and stuff, but I don't see her having any effect when it comes to GRR, the buffer zones, the conversion therapy. I don't see her having any impact on that.
No. What do you think, Phil?
Yeah, she's kind of completely lost me, I think, in terms of expecting to see good things coming from her. I know that you're hopeful for a turn, and you think in private that she's got some good views and some good opinions, then she's voicing the opposite. But I really think that if you disown those things publicly, then you can't really strongly hold them privately. They can't be really core values if you're speaking out the opposite of them. And so, I admire what she did when she stood up, and when she was beginning her campaign, and she said, I would have voted against gay marriage, and that seems like an honest opinion that a Christian would have, and that most Christians, I think, would be thinking. And now to have, gone completely to the other extremes, saying, I'm on the side of locking up Christians that are protesting against abortion, or people who are what was the other one at the moment that you can get 7 years for? Was she in line with the hate speech and all of these kind of things?
Yes, conversion therapy as well. She's committed to
conversion therapy, the hate speech. I think there's something else as well, that there was you can get 7 years prison that she was in favour of, that would get most Christians. I'm trying to think what that was. Yeah, I mean, abortion and conversion therapy, those two, buffer zones, and conversion therapy, to be on side for both of those, and to say, 7 years in prison for each of those. And that's really her fellow Christians, she's saying, should be locked up. And
I think she loves to present with justification. Look at the way I've been treated because of my faith. But then I say, look at the way you're wanting other Christians to be treated.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite. But I think if you start saying the opposite of what you really believe, it's not too long until what you actually believe starts changing. I think there's a feedback loop.
My sort of feel from a biblical point of view was that, the betrayal of Jesus was basically that he handed over Jesus as one of Jesus' friends so that Jesus could be arrested. And, I feel Kate is not far off that, in terms of saying that people who are doing things that Christians should be doing, that they should be in prison. That I really find that almost to be worse than somebody who's saying, I completely disagree with his values and always have done. At least it's consistent when it comes from the Greens or comes from Patrick Harvey or something like that. It's understandable and rational. But to see that coming from Kate, it's really, really tough, I think, and I think she really has to think if she can stand as a Christian, and if should be presenting publicly as a Christian, if that's the position she's in.
Yes, it's hard to see, really. Sorry.
No, go on.
Sorry. It's hard to see what she's getting out of this, apart from a ministerial post. Is that really why she's taking this line? I do find that quite strange. Because as a Christian, I think, well, it's not worth it, even for a ministerial post, a position in government. And some people are saying she might be the leader in waiting. Well, I'm sorry, I just can't see that, because the SNP is still infested with what I call the Sturgeonites, and they will never let her become the First Minister. And even if that was to change, when you've got the Greens and probably the Lib Dems as well lining up against her, I just don't see it. So it does seem a bit strange. What is she getting out of it?
I'll present the other side of the argument a little bit.
Yeah.
Kate, well, she wouldn't say this, because you can't say these things openly, but this might be what she's thinking. She might be thinking, well, if I can keep my head down, okay, Deputy First Minister, things just keep falling into her lap. That's just a fact. I mean, it's just just everything works out perfectly for her. And so, I mean, if I was John Swinney, I'd be quite worried. Because the track record of people just like the sea opens up before Kate Forbes. So maybe she would say, no, not say, maybe she's thinking, once I'm First Minister, that's when you can really start making a difference. I'll start bringing people in who are on my wavelength. That's when I'll start persuading them. I think the problem with that is, when you're First Minister, you're under more pressure than you've been at any stage on the way up. And it's more difficult to stand up for anything and speak out as First Minister. But the other thing she might say, well, Scotland's been run really badly. I could make a better job of it. So my calling is to actually run the country decently. And I don't want these other things to be a barrier to me being able to do that. That's my particular calling. Other people can campaign on these other things, but my calling is just to run the country well.
I have some sympathy with that view. Like I can see that it must be frustrating to be in government and to see people who aren't very competent, running things. And so I think with Humza there, that he had bad values and didn't seem to be very competent, in my opinion. And for Kate, she seems to at least be competent, have her head screwed on, know how to present things fairly well and things like that, and so it must be frustrating to be on the sidelines thinking, well, I could do things a bit better than this, and yeah. I think for us, that's the challenge as well, that I think we've got the right values of a party, but we need experience in running lots of things as well.
Yeah. Have you invited Kate on the live stream? No. That certainly would finish her off career if she came on the family party live stream. So yeah, I don't think we'll be seeing that anytime soon.
But I think like the challenge at the moment is, the SNP is now trying to hold itself together by ignoring moral issues, and so they're presenting it as Kate being kind of on the right and Swinney being on the left. Kate centre right, Swinney centre left, and together they can bring together all the people that want to see independence from the left and the right, as long as no moral issues come up, and it exposes the disunity, which is really there. And so, for the parties that stand for the union, basically, that you have 3 parties or so there, that are serious parties or serious contenders, and the vote is split between them. And so the independent lot have kind of gamed the system by essentially only having one party that people vote for. And I think if they find themselves in a position where they need 2, then that puts them on a level pegging with the unionist parties.
Yeah, and they're heading that way. The Greens will stand in far more constituencies, because they're increasingly at war with the SNP, I think. Right now, talking about these issues, John Swinney, let me find it on my slides. I think I've got a slide here. Here he is. Right, so he was asked what a woman was. His answer was entirely in line with the law. So his view is the official view of the UK state. He said a woman is an adult human female, or someone who identifies as a woman, got the right certificate from the government, whatever. I mean, I just find it so frustrating to listen to this debate rumble on and on and on. Does Rishi Sunak know a woman is? Does Keir Starmer? And they like ask them. But basically, if you don't want the Gender Recognition Act repealing, then your definition of a woman is adult human female or person with a certificate from the government. And all these politicians will be at, they all think it's real woman or man with a certificate from the government. But like the media discussion around it won't get to the heart of the matter. And I find it very frustrating. So John Swinney said that, and he's getting flack for it. Yeah, but what does Douglas Ross say? What's the Conservative policy on it? It's very, very, very frustrating.
Yeah. Well, certainly Labour wouldn't be any better on the question. I've had my Labour candidate for Westminster knocking on the door, and he couldn't tell me what a woman was. He said that was a simplistic question when I asked him.
Yes. Maybe we should do a flyer, which is, it just has across the top, what is a woman, and then it's got 2 sides, and it's got on the left, man with certificate. Under that, it's got Conservatives and all the parties, and then on the right, it's got the Scottish Family Party with adult and female.
And on the one, real woman or man with a certificate, you can add in Reform and Alba on that side of the thing as well.
Yeah,
but that's all of their policies. I mean, which brings us neatly onto. I know Ian's watching here. Let's get a little slide about. There we are. That's a little picture of Ian there campaigning in the Kilwinning by-election that took place last week, and we were Ian ran a great campaign, and we were delighted to get 3.4% of the first preference vote, which is not a record for us, but it's not far off. 3.4%. First and second preference votes put together were 12.8%. So I think first or second preference is a positive endorsement of the party. I think sometimes people put you fourth because they think that harms the person they put fifth. It doesn't really, but that's what people think. But if people are putting you first or second, then they've got some positive stance towards the family party. So that was very encouraging as well. We're currently on the hunt for a candidate for the council by-election in Harris, the Isle of Harris, which is not really an island, but you'll obviously know that. So if you're watching from Harris and you're interested in being the Scottish Family Party councillor for the Harris ward, then please get in touch with us, and we'd love to explore that possibility. So yeah, well done, Ian. I know you're watching there as well, so that was great. Right, let's have a look what else we've got in my slides here. Well, let's watch a video. Where should we start with a video? Let's go for this. Here we go. I'll talk over this. The sound's not very interesting. This has been shared quite widely on social media, and the point is that this is sort of a bit of a mob trying to get on a bus. This is somewhere in England. And the British tradition of queuing has obviously gone out of the window, and it's just a big scrum to get on the bus. And this has been commonly shared under a sort of banner of this is what happens when you have too many immigrants, which I'm not sure. Well, I think more needs to be said from that. Let's just put it that way. But what I would say about this is, when I was teaching, I mean, if you've got a bunch of boys and a coach comes, their natural way of getting on a coach would be to have a massive scrum. And remember, you have to be quite fierce and stern to actually get some sort of discipline for them to line up and get on a bus in a civilized fashion. So I don't think there's anything like probably a human universal. But what can happen? Like the British tradition of queuing, I think, is an excellent thing. And I find it quite bizarre when you go to other countries, like other European countries. And like people come in from all angles, and I think probably us Brits, we get quite annoyed about it. What are you doing? Be polite, get in the queue. But I guess if large numbers of people come from other countries, it's quite likely that they might not have the tradition of queuing, and that situation might be the result. Having said that, I'm sure you could find pictures of groups of British people pushing and shoving onto a bus as well, very easily. And the other thing with immigrants as well, sometimes immigrants might bring in values that are actually superior to the average natives. Like they might bring in, you work really hard at school and you do as you're told, values such as that. So it's a whole mixture. So I think to present this video as look what happens when you have too much, this is what immigrants do for you, I think that's far too simplistic. But on the other hand, it is something that needs to be weighed up when thinking about immigration. It is going to have an effect on the culture. If you bring in huge numbers of people from a different culture, that will have an effect on the existing culture, for good or bad or neutral or however it happens to go. So, yeah, I'd rather have seen that video. Have you?
No, I'd not seen it, but I do know that we're famous around the world for our queues, that we'll queue for any reason, pretty much. Yeah.
Having said, I mean, yeah, I don't think we do queue so much for buses these days. Whenever I've been waiting for a bus, there's just this sort of group hanging around, and then they all just surge forward for the door. Not quite as bad as in the video, but yes, I don't think we can just blame that on immigration. And I did see that video popping up on X under the title of, well, all these immigrants, blah, blah. But yes, as Richard's saying, it's not quite as straightforward as that. So,
I would say in Scotland, I think it would be very rare to find pushing and shoving to get on a bus. Mm-hmm. That'd be very rare. So even if there's not like formal queuing, it's still very, very polite. I would say I've been to a few football matches recently, and even there, when there's a turnstile, people queue up in a line for it. But in another country I've been in recently, I said just people come in from all angles, and I get really frustrated. Think, what were you doing? Is it not obvious that that's not fair? But yeah, it's interesting the different cultures and how they're affected. So I think people raising the issue of the effect that large numbers of people from various other cultures might have on the culture in Scotland or the UK, I think is a very valid question to ask. And I think we should be absolutely free to say in some cases that there's been a negative effect. That's absolutely fine. Maybe this probably is illustrating a negative effect. In other cases, there might be a positive effect, but certainly it should be something that we're free to talk about, I would say. Someone said, we'll really know if foreign culture's taken hold when people start like riding on the roof of the bus and hanging onto the windows on the outside, like you see the famous pictures from India.
Yeah.
Right, what else have I got on my... you might have...
Ian Livingston, about this time last year, said that the force was institutionally racist and discriminatory. When you started, you said you accepted that assessment. Is that still the case now?
It is. We've come a long way. Where cultural change takes time. Hugely impressed by the people I've met in this organisation. The vast majority of them withhold the standards that we would expect in policing, and we should be I'm very proud of what I see, and very confident of what I see. It's a big organisation.
But you think it's likely there are people in Police Scotland at the moment that you don't really want here?
There are people who do not demonstrate the standards that we would expect and that the public would expect.
Do you have any kind of sense of how many that might be?
Well, we have a number of people under investigation. At any one time. The new bill will provide extra or modernise some of the arrangements around misconduct and investigations. But like I say, the vast majority of people are professional, trustworthy, and we should be really proud of them.
But the reason I wanted to show that is she basically seems to say she's really proud of the institutionally racist police and sexist Police Scotland. So it's institutionally racist and sexist, but the people in it are not, apart from a tiny number. I mean, how can this possibly make any sense? I mean, it's just quite bizarre, I think.
Nice to see her actually showing her face, mind you, because for the first brief while after the hate crime bill, she was nowhere to be seen.
I think in any large organisation, you're going to have some people that are going to break whatever rules that there are. Every company expects some people to be fired or something like that. That for misconduct, and so to use the terms institutionally racist and then say it's just a very small number of people, just really isn't saying it's institutionally racist. Other than the thing that you've pointed out, where they appear to be racist against white working class people.
Yeah. I mean, it's saying you're institutionally racist and sexist. That's actually a way of communicating that you're good people. That's like what we're on the side of the progressives of the social justice ideology. We're all on board with that. So it's a way. It's a virtue signal. Saying that you're institutionally racist and sexist is a virtue signal. So, for example, if the Scottish Family Party said, we need to recognise we're institutionally racist and sexist, and we've got to have dramatic change to tackle these issues, who would that encourage to vote for us? It would be people with a sort of neo-Marxist identity politics ideology. So saying that you're recognising that you're sexist and racist when you're not really, that actually gets the people who are most concerned about sexism and racism. It gets them to support you. I mean, it's a really bizarre thing. I mean, it's just parroting the government's lines there, really. But the other thing I would say is I sort of wasn't particularly impressed by it. I mean, she's the head of a £1 billion a year budget organisation. I wasn't entirely convinced. I wonder if she was the best person for the job. I'm not sure, but I wasn't very impressed with that.
Yeah.
Okay. What else have we got? This is an interesting little video clip. If I hang on, where's right? John asked a question. A question for you, Rosemary. Right, John's curious. Where do you stand on our flagship policies? Well, what would our flagship policies be? Right, pro-family. I guess that's quite vague. But pro-marriage, do you think that's a valid political priority for a party?
Well, I certainly support pro-marriage. It's the best environment for kids to grow up in. I think, I haven't looked at your manifesto for a while, but I would say I support all the main policies. I'm definitely pro-marriage, pro-family, marriage being between one man and one woman for life. Certainly support that. I mean, as I say, I stood in 2007 for the Scottish Christian Party, which had all of the same policies in terms of the family. And I haven't changed my mind since.
Yeah. Our pro-life, another key one?
Definitely, yes. Yep. I'm very concerned at some of the things that are trying to come forward on that, but also heartened that people are trying to reduce the abortion time limit. It would be nice not to have it at all, but at least that's a step. And very encouraged that my local MP, when I wrote to him about the Don't Screen Us Out Down syndrome, he has supported Liam Fox's amendment in Westminster, which I wrote back and thanked him for. So, and that's basically, for those who don't know, that is bringing into line that disabled people cannot be aborted after the limit when non-disabled are not allowed to be aborted, because at the moment you could abort a Downs baby up to birth, which I think is horrendous.
Yeah, but that's one of the issues where I reckon give the family party a couple of MSPs in the Parliament, and we could really get that on the agenda. Maybe even get a bill brought forward or get some debate on that, because they're on a sticky wicket trying to defend that. So why do you think disabled people's lives don't matter as much?
Yeah.
But generally in the Parliament, that they're never challenged on these things. They can just stand there doing their healthcare, women's rights, and all this sort of thing, and they don't really get put on the spot about them. But I think there's an open goal there. I mean, freedom of speech, obviously. I mean, having given 2 speeches at about the hate speech legislation demonstrations.
Yes,
another one is sorry, go.
Freedom of speech, I've always been very, it's one of my main things, because if you don't have freedom of speech, then you don't have the freedom to stand up and preach the gospel, or stand up and say what you believe about family friendly policies or whatever, so freedom of speech is really the bedrock if you don't have that. And that's why I've been speaking at these rallies, and I'm very concerned at any move to limit freedom of speech.
Yeah, got a careers advice for you there, for Raymond. Okay. Rather, the fifth of our policy, we normally say, if we were going to give 5, would be real education. So proper academic teaching, good discipline, and cut out all the politicization and sexualization from the curriculum.
Definitely. There's something needs to be done about our education system. It's absolutely terrible. I have supported Christian education for a long time, although I don't have children myself. But I mean, just generally, yes, there needs to be a huge change in the way our schools are run.
Yeah. Actually, I saw an article in the Telegraph today. It was interesting. It was about the very dramatic increase in the number of parents home educating their children. Now, what was the total number? Was it 2,200 over the whole of Scotland? But the increase had been, I think it was increased by 40% in the last 5 years. They were the same. Yeah. And it's interesting that the government is making an effort to monitor this, because they're aware that this is a growing trend. And if you're the government running the education system, I mean, there's no stronger message you can get if when people are willing to refuse the free offer of professional education in order to take on the massive commitment to try to do it yourself. But if people are willing to do that in increasing numbers, that's a pretty powerful message to the government, I think. Will they listen to it? No, they'll just think that some parents are denying children their rights to a proper education, and they'll need to clamp down on it. Okay. Right. Thanks for that question. All right. I was going to show another little video clip. This was a video again. It's been circulated on social media. What are we talking about? Are we talking about a trans woman? So a man pretending to be a woman who has procured a baby with a surrogate. So he's paid some woman, this is America, I think, so he's paid some woman to have a baby for him. And this baby has been handed over to his or her, mother, father, neither really. And then the expression on the baby's face, the response to the baby is, seems quite illustrative of the nature of the transaction taking place. So just watch this.
I know, but her mother has no problem.
Oh, he went right up to right. Here we go. Oh, there she goes. Oh, yeah. So cool. She's mad.
So, what do you make of that?
Horrible child abuse, as far as I'm concerned.
I just feel he needs a doll. He wants a doll, so he should be given a doll, not a baby. No.
Yeah.
There's actually quite a campaign against surrogacy at the moment. There's a group in Scotland. I think there's a growing movement worldwide. Is that one of my slides, actually? Emmanuel Macron, the other day, said that definitely, I think it is banned in France and it needs keeping banned. They was coming up with policies to increase the birth rate. And they were saying, we're going to try these things, but we're not encouraging surrogacy because that degrades the role of women or something. We're not having that. So I think there's a growing movement against surrogacy, and that's good because that's our policy. Our policy is just total ban.
Yeah.
At the moment, there's a ban on commercial surrogacy. The surrogacy is allowed in the UK, but not if we had our way. I think that video, obviously, I mean, a baby's expression. We may be careful reading too much into that, but the fact I just think it illustrates the situation there because the person whose feelings are neglected in these things is, of course, the baby. It's all about the adult. It's about the woman making money, and it's about the man getting what he wants, and the baby is deprived of what he or she needs. So,
yeah.
Right, another little video as well. We're watching this video. When I watched this, it made me think of the message in Scottish education through the RSHB.Scot resources that John Swinney was bragging that he was the person that introduced them an LGBT inclusive education. Because the message from nursery is, families come in all different shapes and sizes. I mean, it doesn't matter how many men, how many women. It's all just lovely. We celebrate diversity, and don't let anyone tell you that one form of family is better than another. Well, let's have a look at this.
Polyamorous relationship, and they all parent Hazel and Sparrow.
We have a 2-year-old anti-gender baby and a 10-year-old who is non-binary.
They have chosen not to disclose Sparrow's gender.
We don't know it yet. It's something that Sparrow's going to have to figure out and then tell us.
But their parenting approach is controversial.
I have literally received death threats. Crazy, crazy lady. I hope karma hits you back and your kids grow up to detest you.
These polyamorous parents let their children choose their gender. And for their oldest child, Hazel, that's neither male nor female.
Please tell us how and why you decided to come out as non-binary.
Because the pronouns she and he did not fit. Non-binary was what I turned to, though I do choose to act and look more feminine. Can I go down now?
Of course.
And 2.5-year-old Sparrow has yet to make a choice about their gender.
Sparrow, do you want a banana?
They're anti-gender. but we're using they, them pronouns. Sure, they have anatomy, we understand it, but like that's not indicative of their identity. It's something that Sparrow's gonna have to figure out and then tell us before we could handle anyone else.
Particularly because it's, you know, something that our parents did and they got it wrong.
Oh dear.
How about that then?
Oh.
I think the sad thing is seeing that the television programs being made about that. Is that a terrestrial UK channel that was on?
It sounds American. In the UK, the BBC and other media channels, they're really pushing polyamorous relationships. There's a stream of like Channel 4 series or articles about here's the jolly throuple. So they're definitely pushing it. Yeah, that's probably a particularly extreme case. They always push it by trying to present it with all the trappings of all the good things of family life. It's presented in a completely non-critical way. It's not like focusing on the difference. Yeah, it's a very gentle presentation of it, very positive presentation. I say the BBC and Channel 4, two government agencies, are definitely pushing it quite hard. And this thing that you get death threats, I mean, that annoys me. I mean, anyone in the public eye, there's a lot of nasty people out there. And also there's a lot of people who are mentally ill out there as well. So if you're in the public eye at all, you will get a smattering at least of like deranged people saying things like that. But you can't possibly use it as an argument that you're actually right or to present yourself in a good light. That was someone's use as speciality, wasn't it? People are horrible to me, therefore I must be really good. So yeah, that's quite frustrating.
And I think the kind of obvious thing there as well is that the children are brought up in that atmosphere, and then they themselves find them that they're non-binary or was it anti-gender or whatever that was. I'm not sure. You know, and to me, so much of this is something that's environmental. You know, that we're seeing it pushed in the schools, we're seeing it pushed in the media, we're seeing it pushed on TikTok, and we're seeing a massive rise of people that don't identify, you know, with their biological sex, you know, and so, yeah, I think that's where kind of probably positive values come in media and role models and these kind of things.
Yeah. So let's imagine, let's do a little thought experiment. Let's say we had John Swinney on the live stream tonight. So we'll move Rosemary along while we put John Swinney in there. You'd obviously have to be sort of strapped down to force him to do it. And we'll say, well, John, what do you think of that? What would he say?
Well, yeah, he certainly wouldn't condemn it outright. There's no way he would condemn that. So he'd try and find some sort of weasel way of sort of, well, yeah, interesting.
Well, what do you think he'd say, Phil?
I think he's got to avoid the subject at the moment. You know, I think he's got to say that well, we're not focusing on that at the moment. We've got all sorts of other
He's strapped down in the chair, though. We're forcing him. He's got
to clear up now. We've got ferries to sort out. We've got roads to build. We've got a nation to repair, kind of thing. You know, let's not talk about this for now.
I mean, to be honest, the stuff that they get in nursery and primary school, that clip would be a perfect illustration in the lesson. But that would just fit right in. Because they're saying, you know, any number of men and women, and there's trans and there's this, that, and the other. So that would be a perfect fit. Well, I think John Swinney would employ his superpower if we were forcing him to watch that. And his superpower is to ignore the weighty issue and to manage to answer about some trivial procedural issues. Yeah, I don't know what it would be like. It says it's really glad to see.
Boring answer possible. So that by the time he actually gets to some vague kind of answer, you're just
you're
wanting to waddle off
to what he's saying. Yeah. So it finds some trivial things to say about that, and that would be that. But it's interesting. I mean, how many? If we took this adult population of Scotland I showed them that. Said, what do you think? Approve or disapprove? I think surely you get a substantial majority saying something like that there. Would you? I don't know.
I think younger people would be more accepting of it. Older people, I think the majority would think that was not right.
Yeah.
You know,
something I find with younger people is they might think, yeah, that's not good. But they'd be quite reluctant to say so. Or they think it's not right, but they're not outraged. They don't think it's appalling. It's just, yeah, it's not quite right. Yeah, not really absolutely happy with that. But it doesn't really make them think, whoa, what's going on? You know, the world's going mad. But yeah, that's an interesting little clip. Right, I've got one more clip here. That's right. I don't know if you saw this. Right, that was a gentleman in the loosest sense of the word charging along the street in Paisley a couple of weeks ago with a chainsaw. A couple of police officers were, I understand, slightly injured in an altercation with him. And I think in the video footage of it, it's fairly clear. You can hear him shouting "Allah Akbar." Now, when I first thought, I thought, is that dubbed? Has someone dubbed that over? So I watched it very carefully. A car goes past. The sound of the car is right. That's in there. And people have said they've seen different angles, and I'm pretty confident that that's what he was saying. But all the news reports of it, BBC, newspapers, none of them mention that. And I just think that's unhelpful. And the reason it's unhelpful is it makes people think they're covering it up. Therefore, that makes it into a worse problem for people. That makes people think, oh, that this could be going on all over the place because people are making such an effort to cover it up. And then they should just be open and straightforward. I mean, I haven't heard any more about the case. I mean, it's quite likely, I would imagine, that the man was not in tip-top mental health, I would imagine, charging along the street with a chainsaw randomly. But, yeah, I was concerned that it seemed to be that the media just wouldn't report what I think is an important fact about what had gone on there.
I think about a decade ago, a long time ago, there was a story about a woman who was imprisoned, I think, in a Muslim majority country. And then she returned to Australia. And when she told the story of what happened to her, she then fell foul of their hate crime law for being Islamophobic. And all she'd done is recounted the actual things that happened to her.
Just recently?
No, it's not recent. It's years and years ago.
Well, there's been a recent one as well. This week I saw one. Someone had been imprisoned by ISIS. I may not have the details right. But so raped as well, but she'd escaped. I think she'd gone to Canada, and she wrote a book about her experiences. And I can't. But there were moves to ban the book.
Yeah,
because it would be bad for community relations.
So where the hate crime bills have come in. So years and years ago, there was a hate crime bill they tried to bring in the UK, and Tony Blair didn't turn up for the vote, and they lost by one vote. There were lots of Christians praying about that, and it didn't end up passing, this hate crime law. And it's always, I think, been Muslims pushing for the hate crime laws. And I really, fear that the reason behind it is that when, there's this sort of strategy of that bad things can happen, and then when you speak about the bad things happening, you're accused of saying that this is something intrinsic within Islam, or most commonly happens with Islam. And I think there's real issues there. Why are these things coming? Why is the hate crime law coming from an Islamic perspective? Or why is it being pushed by Islamic groups and things like that?
Yeah. There was a rally in George Square in Glasgow some years ago now, organised by Muslims, and Nicola Sturgeon spoke at it. And there was a banner that, as I remember, the main banner behind the stage said something like freedom of speech, but but, and it was, I can't remember the words of the banner, but basically the gist of the banner was, we want a blasphemy law in Scotland. Now, I would imagine an awful lot of Muslims don't agree with that. But this event where Nicola Sturgeon was speaking, that seemed to be the message, was that we need to clamp down on criticism of Islam, which I think we were talking about immigration earlier in terms of like culture change through immigration. I think freedom of speech is so fundamental to a society. Then I think that's something that needs to be defended. Now, the problem within democracy, if someone's got another idea, if someone's idea is no, actually we don't want freedom of speech. But we want it so that you're only allowed to say a narrow range of things. Then I say, okay, that's fine. Put yourself, form a party, put yourself up for election, and that's fine. That's democracy to a degree. But I think the problem with that is if the process becomes more, and there's going to be more and more people coming to the country who agree with this, or even we're going to have a lot more children than other groups in the population, and that's the way we're going to gain influence, then in a democracy that becomes problematic. Like the democratic system doesn't work to a degree, or problems can come along. Now, when I said about if a party puts itself up for election saying they're going to clamp down on freedom of speech, now that's where human rights come in. The idea of human rights, the United Nations Convention of Human Rights, is that it restricts governments in what they're able to do in terms of restricting their population. So at their best, at their original purpose, that's where human rights should come into play. And the United Nations should say, well, I don't care if you won the election, you can't do that. You shouldn't do that, which is good. But yeah, interesting issue. Now I think I've got a slide or two left. Let's go back to the beginning to make sure I've got them all. Right. Oh, the men's sheds. I didn't talk about the men's sheds, did I, at the beginning? And the men's sheds movement, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a sort of charity, sort of government funding. They tend to get a sort of workshop type room. And I think generally retired men go along and they basically do useful things. Like they'll help repair the park benches, or they'll do things just for fun, or whatever. But it's not practical work, which they like doing. Often that's what they might have done through their careers. And then it's a bit of a social hub as well. And part of the thinking is this can be a very positive thing for these retired men who might be lonely in some ways. That this sort of activity very positive for them. It gets presented under the mental health banner, which I think sort of everything tends to be these days. I think maybe that's not the most helpful banner, but quite it seems like a positive thing to be going on in any case. And the government was talking about cutting the funding for it again, which they talked about last year. There's been a bit of a backlash, and they've changed their mind, and the funding will continue. People are making the point that of all the things the government could cut, they choose the thing for men. I mean, all of their millions that get poured into LGBT women's groups as well, all vastly greater sums. And the little bit for men was the bit they tried to chop, which was, I think, maybe quite revealing. So, are you aware of that story?
Not aware of the story, but I'm kind of fed up of government funding of charities, really. Like I feel like the definition of charity should really be, something where people that care about the thing are giving to it. Charity really means love and care and all those kind of things. Yeah. And so I'd rather it was the populace that's giving to charity, rather than we give to the government and then they give to charity on our behalf. And I really feel that lots of the charities that are being given to by the government, to me, they're fake charities, because you look through their accounts and there's no user base to their charity. There's no popular, support for the charity. And I'd say just put all charities in the same position, lower our taxes, and let us, give to the things that we think are worthy.
And if the government wants to do something, then it should do it under its own banner, so it's clear what it's doing.
some nationalised thing, like we have a nationalised health service or something like that. If there's something that's important and the ball's being dropped because not enough people care about it, but it's vital that it's done, then maybe the government can step in there. But to have charities effectively be unaccountable parts of the government, I don't think is acceptable.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I did see the men's shed thing, and I think there was actually a petition going round, which I signed online, and I'm pleased to see that they've changed their minds. Because it does seem to me to be a very valuable charity, and compared with some of the other things that the government was still finding money for, yes, I think this is a more important thing than a lot of other things.
Yeah, my view of it, it's a bit like Phil's as well. I think for the people involved as well, I think it's probably healthier if you're going to something that actually you don't think of as a charity. It's more like a club. So I don't know, have you ever been to the Bus Museum in Fife? Probably not.
No, I've not actually.
No, well, I recommend it. It's really good.
Okay.
It's one of those museums. There's partly a museum, but it's also it's a giant men's shed as well. It's a bunch of blokes who volunteer. A lot of them were bus drivers or mechanics or whatever, and they go along and they restore buses and they drive them around, and people like seeing them, and they'll chat to you all afternoon about the different engines that went to them or whatever. And then basically that is a men's shed as well. There's a motor museum in Elgin I went to last year sometime, and again the people there are volunteers, and they run this museum, and basically they go and play with cars. And that's what they like to do. So it's effectively like a men's shed. So I think the government should try and make it easier and provide facilities and space for organisations like that to do their thing. And I think that's much better than something having to be set up as a charity. So try and encourage the grassroots activity. I mean, another thing that sprung to mind with this was the Model Railway Club, which you generally find, a lot of retired men will go along and tinker with these things, and they'll open it to the public, and the kids will enjoy going to see it. Really brilliant. So I think encouraging that by providing facilities, by removing red tape, is the way to go. To encourage genuine grassroots activities, I think that's best all around. But the men's shed, of what I've heard of it does sound a very positive thing. The other thing with this as well, it's not a campaigning group. If you look at the women's groups or the LGBT groups, what do they spend their time doing? They spend their time telling the government what to do. Whereas the men's sheds seem to spend their time getting men together and doing something useful, and it's a really positive part of their life, which is quite a contrast. Let's just see if that's got left. We talked about that. I think I talked about that last week. We talked about that. I just saw it quickly. Abigail Schreier, American author, very good. I was quite taken with this post on X. Restorative justice is a therapeutic practice which is tantamount to no consequences at all for rule breaking. Yep, that's a pretty good definition. It's a disaster wherever it's been tried. And where's it been tried in Scotland? In schools, of course. It's been tried in schools, and it is indeed a disaster. But the educational establishment is so blinkered that they can't see it. They just don't get it. They just keep pushing further in the same direction. I just forgot to mention our family party events. There's an awful lot coming up, so have a look at that. Thursday this week, Coatbridge and lunchtime. Friday at the end of next week, meeting in Dundee. And then on it goes. So do check our social media. We've got a lot of meetings going on. It would be great to see you at any of those. And that's us done. 10:05. Thank you very much for spending the hour with us on screen, and those of you watching, commenting as well. Appreciate that. And those of you who watch later, hope you found it interesting. We will be back next week. There's always lots to talk about. But can I thank you, Rosemary? I hope you've enjoyed your evening on the live stream. And thank you, Phil.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you very much.
No, pleasure.
Good to meet you, Rosemary. Again. Yeah.
Right, so everyone, see you next week. Just before we go, just to mention, what we're going to do soon as well, maybe next week, is at the end of the live stream, we're going to go to a Twitter space, an X space, where you can go and join in, and then we can all you can all join in with the conversation instead of just commenting. You'll be able to join in with the chat. So maybe next week we'll give that a try. So that's going to be a new initiative which you might enjoy. Right.
Good night. Look out for that.
Yeah. Good night.
Good night. Thank